Hey, I'm Jawad and I am back. How do simple models grow into complex models? One. Two, how do you put them together? Three, this whole bit about making your models dynamic and making sure things flow from top to the bottom. Can we see an example of that or not? The first model we look at for Maya's closet asks a fairly simple question. What would it take to cross $26,000 in sales for the full year? It's based on a simple sales funnel which drives off our traditional conventional sales funnel for an e-commerce site. So the number of search impressions basically feed into click-through rates. Click-through rates give you clicks. Clicks together with conversion rates give you orders, and orders multiplied by ticket size will give you your total sales. Work through this example that's in front of us. 13 million impressions in total at a CTR of say roughly about 4% will give you 370,000 clicks. Conversion rate of 0.18% will give you 665 orders, and a ticket size of $39 on average will give you total revenues of about $26,000. As I said, this is very simple, very basic, very bare bone model that's geared towards answering a core question for Sabine and Altamash, and that question is, what do we need on the search impression side to cross $26,000 in sales? And the answer is, roughly speaking, about 13 million impressions. Now, some of these impressions can come from the search side, some can come from the social side. You can play with the mix. The assumptions that we plugged in here are just that, they're assumptions. These are model parameters. As you play around with these model parameters, you may end up with a set of numbers. Set of numbers that are in alignment with your expectations, or set of numbers that require you to revise your expectations based on the results that you see in front of you. So that's model number one. Model number one is a simple model. In most instances, we use simple models to make a first call. Is this business interesting enough for us to move forward, to explore it further, to take the first step? We're not in a position to take a full leap of faith. We may be in a position to spend a little bit of extra time to see if we can make the math work. Model number one, simple model, asks a simple question. What would it take for Maya to cross $25,000 in sales for the full year? Model number two for Maya is a more complex model. While model number one focused on just a single year of sales, model number two focuses on 5 years of sales. It then uses the same sales funnel, which gives you a set of orders and a predicted order size, takes that input and converts that into a full-blown P&L, a profit and loss statement for Maya. So in this specific case, you can clearly see that this model is certainly more complex than model number one. Model number one was sales for a single year, did not have a P&L component. Model number two has sales for 5 years and has a fairly detailed P&L. And while model number two is not as sophisticated as we want it to be, we can clearly see that even at this level, even at this threshold, model number two also has submodels. Your sales model, which is basically a combination of your order size and your orders per month, is a small, simple submodel. Right now it's all hard-coded, so both the orders and the order size are hard-coded, but you can very easily replace it by a more sophisticated submodel. So two submodels working together to create a more sophisticated, complete model. Let's move on to model number three. Model number three is a financial model with multiple submodels. The very first submodel in model number three is your traffic model. And the reason why we build this separate traffic model is because we have a sense that part of our traffic, part of our impression strategy is going to come not just from organic views and organic impressions, but from ad spend. So we've built a separate model. It doesn't just give us a sense of the traffic generated by the business, also gives us enough data to use in a separate submodel that gives us a sense of the ad spend required to hit the traffic numbers we need to meet our orders slash revenue forecast for the next 5, 6, or 7 years. In addition to the traffic model, you'll also see that there is a customer retention model or a model for churn. One of the questions we're trying to answer from both a traffic model as well as from a customer churn model is, what's my customer acquisition cost? How much does each order costs me as a business? Now, if the only source of flow of orders to my business is ad spend, my CAC or customer acquisition cost is going to be high. But if I'm able to retain some customers and convince them to come again and buy again from me as a business, my customer acquisition cost is going to drop, is going to fall as I move forward. But to do that correctly, I need to build a model of retained customers, which is what the second model does. So we have a first model for impressions, we have a second model for customer retention. Then we have a third model for processing headcount. Model number 4 focuses on the processing cost of orders. Model number 5 looks at your headcount outside of the processing team. Model number 6 looks at square footage, space. Model number 7 looks at the actual expense of renting and leasing these facilities. And then model number 8 takes all of what you've seen above and combines that into your G&A expense exercise. 7 separate submodels that feed into an 8th model, and this 8th model is still not your financials. This 8th model though feeds straight into your total G&A, flows from this cell all the way to G&A expense here. Your ad spend, remember the ad spend? The ad spend calculation? Where is that? Here's the ad spend calculation. The ad spend model, just like the G&A expense, flows all the way down to your sales and marketing expense here. By breaking this down into 8 models, we've significantly reduced the complexity required to calculate SG&A. So I hope you can clearly see that there is a clear relationship between submodels and models that submodels flow into. Start with simple models, add complexity piecemeal, bring submodels together. As models grow in complexity, they also answer different questions. The traffic models answers a different question. Actually answers 2 separate questions. What is the cost of generating traffic? And how does it impact not just our ad spend, but also our customer acquisition cost? The customer retention model or customer churn model, model number 2 that we looked at here, also answers multiple questions. First question it answers is, what set of parameters define retention for us? And can we take this pool over a period of years and convince them to come back again and buy from us? And if they do, and if we are successful in that, how does that impact? How does that reduce our customer acquisition cost? Model number 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 together help us answer a different question. And what is that question? What's our general and administrative expenses, not just for the current year, but for the next 6 years, based on the parameters we've defined and specified? And finally, by building this model in a dynamic fashion, by not hard coding values, changing a simple parameter at the top would actually result in changing values all the way down to the bottom. This is what we meant by think of a model as a waterfall. If you change the CPM figure or the CTR figure or the conversion figure or the order size figure above in any of the 8 models, the impact of that change should flow straight into your P&L. That's the beauty, that's the joy of building dynamic models. When we started this session, we wanted to answer two questions. The first question was, how do you go? How do you evolve? How do you move from a simple model to a more complex model? I hope this illustration has helped answer that question. A simple submodel may just answer questions with respect to what does the revenue forecast for a single year look like? It may answer two different type of questions. What do we need to hit $26,000 in revenue? Or what kind of parameters can we play with to move that number higher or lower? You can take that simple model and grow it into a more complex model, and that was model number 2 for us. In model number 2, we took that foundation that was driven by orders per month and order size and converted that into an outlook for the full year. Not just a single year, but for 5 full years. And then in model number 3, we added significantly more complexity, actually using 7 submodels to generate G&A expense. And then an 8th model for our advertising spend. And then we took both of these models and plugged them into our statement of profit and loss, or our P&L. This is Jawad Ahmed Fareed signing off for financetrainingcourse.com.